All right, ladies and gentlemen, our next guest is John
Madsen.
John Madsen.
Yes.
My first scientist. He has a background in physics and robotics, and I'm honored to have him on my podcast. We had an interesting discussion off air, and now we're on. How you doing, John?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Good. Okay. So tell me what you were saying before, because we were having such a great conversation.
Oh, I'm not sure where exactly you want to start. But to me, everything has to be related logic.
Logically based everything.
Yeah. In fact, even when I was a kid, somebody would say, I need to follow my heart. And I'd say, oh, that's going to be a train wreck. Because logic is the very center of intelligence.
Okay. But some things, don't you think, are beyond our logic? Like if someone wants to follow their heart, there's like a heart and mind connection, or you don't really think so?
I think there's an element to that, but I don't think the heart is not foreign. It's not objective. It should not be outside of intelligence. It might be a different dimension of intelligence.
Ooh, different dimension. Okay.
But it's not the same type of thing. I think all things are related.
I do too.
Now, I think I talked to you a while back because you talk about magic as well.
Yes.
And I've done some theorizing with that because I've talked with people writing books and fantasies, and I've consulted with them on that. Okay. And I said, there's really 3 pillars of magic.
You told me this last time.
Yes. And I'll explain this a little bit. The first pillar is mathematics. And
do you think everything in the universe could be explained by mathematics?
Yes.
Time travel, consciousness, do you think that could be explained by mathematics?
Well, to a degree, yes.
To a degree.
But there are 3 pillars. Mathematics is one. Mathematics is the key to understanding the future and what's going to happen. The simple example, and we've all heard this, a train is traveling to Chicago. That's right. 220 miles away. And it's traveling at 70 miles an hour. Mathematics tells you when you're going to get there. It tells you the future very accurately. That's the simplest way to look at it.
Okay.
Now, there's other things. We get into weather. These are complex systems. And in science, we talk about complex systems based on chaos theory. And I don't know if you've ever heard of
that. I have a little bit. You can tell us what that is really
quickly. Okay. A simple explanation of chaos theory is that in a complex system, there are many parameters.
Okay.
And all the parameters exist in a balance. They coexist with each other, and they all balance out. And you can think of a paper sitting on a desk as being balanced by gravity, and so it stays there. If you do something to the balance, then things begin to change. And what happens in chaos theory is we say once the parameters start to change, they reach a new balance. But you can't put things back together just by, let's say, the paper falling off the table. Mm-hmm. You think, all we have to do is put the paper back and everything's the same. But there are molecules and things that are spilled on the floor. There's other things that have happened. So even though you put it back, it's not the same.
It's not the same. So there's different factors that play into it. Okay.
So you can't always put things back exactly as they were.
That's chaos theory.
That's why it's called chaos theory.
Okay, so the second pillar?
Okay, the second pillar is music. Now, I don't define music just as a symphony.
Do you define it as like sounds and vibrations also?
Sounds, vibrations, and ratios.
And ratios?
Ratios, which is also mathematics. So the things are related.
That's connected. Right.
Now, the ancient Egyptians, they believed that if you understood the ratios of things, you could control them.
You mean the ratio of 2 men and 2 women?
Not
that type of ratio?
Well, that is a type of ratio. But say, for example, the golden mean. That was originally invented by the Egyptians, but they believed, for example, that the elements were basically earth, wind, fire, and water.
Okay.
And that everything exists as a ratio of those. And if you understood what the ratios were, then you could manipulate things and get
Like
what
the
you
stock
want.
market?
Yeah. Exactly. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
The stock market is more of a chaos theory type
Right,
dealing with, but which is a different type of mathematical. But here we're talking about the idea that using ratios, rhythms, and whatever, you can begin to control things. Not only can you see the future with mathematics, but with music and rhythm and ratios, you can begin to manipulate stuff.
Okay. Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah.
And what's the third?
The third one is love.
Love? Ooh,
Love.
I like it.
Now,
That has to play with your heart, doesn't it?
well,
Or it's just emotion that your heart.
no, it's not really emotion. I'm going to introduce a new idea to you.
Sure.
Let's go back and we'll look at a single cell.
Mm-hmm.
And all life is built from a single cell. And what begins to happen at some point is mitochondria. It within the cell begins to separate. And then eventually that cell will divide into two cells.
Okay.
And each of those two cells are as different from each other as they are from the original cell. In other words, the parent cell no longer exists. All you have are two children.
Right. But they have 75% of their parents in them. Or they have 100%, 50-50.
Well, in this case, with a single cell, and you have single cells all through you.
Right. And they shed, they regenerate.
They're regenerating, they're doing all of these things. Now, the concept there is that the original cell sacrificed itself in essence so that two more cells could exist.
Okay.
Can
you give me an example of that? Just so I'm a little more clear.
Well, this is what I'm talking about, the love. And in many religions, the idea is and Jesus said this, if there's no greater love than he that's willing to lay down their life for a friend. So
that's very true. But what I'm thinking is when the cells divide each other, isn't that more like basic instinct than love?
Well, it's an intelligent action.
Okay.
And I'm using this as the basis for something bigger, a foundation of which we're going to build off of.
Right. Okay.
So the idea is that it may be a basic instinct, but there's something intelligent driving that.
Got it. Beyond itself.
And and even it's part of itself because it's going to produce something beyond itself.
Got it. Do you think like there's a source or a higher consciousness when you say it's beyond itself, but it's also a part of the self?
Well, that probably is.
You mean like the Force? I'm just using the Star Wars example.
The Star Wars example, the Force.
The Force is with me, I am with the Force. In a sense like that?
Yes.
How would you measure that, though? With mathematics.
Well, that's why it's a different pillar.
Okay.
It can't always
something different.
Yeah.
So when you mean you have different pillars, you have three different theories.
Well, no, the idea is that those three things combined to make what appears
to be magic. Got it.
And to make the unexplainable that we see at this where we are now. What do I want to say? The
better understanding of unexplainable things.
Well, yes, the environment in which all things could be explained.
Okay.
And they're all a part of that. And what I'm saying is we can look out and we can see these pieces. Now, in science, we talk about the isometric character of the universe. That means it's the same everywhere you go.
It's the same everywhere you go.
Yes, all the laws, physics, all the gravity, everything, electrical, magnetic, everything's the same wherever you go throughout the entire universe. You're not going to go home somewhere and find things different.
The thing is, we haven't really been too far beyond the moon.
Right.
So how would we're theoretically predicting that, but how do we really know? What if we go to a different galaxy and things are just different?
Well, we are looking out through the Hubble telescope and a lot of things now, and we're seeing that the universe is pretty much organized and ordered the same way everywhere we look.
So some people have a theory that there's a veil. Maybe it's a different filters through the human's eye. Maybe we're wearing a VR headset and things like that to see what I guess other people want us to see or other entities. Do you think something like that is possible?
Something like that might be possible, and I have sometimes theorized that.
No problem. Nah, go ahead and pick it up.
No.
Or you could just turn it off. Oh yeah,
I
all
did.
right.
We're looking out at a universe in 3 dimensions,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what we understand in Liquidian. Man, I don't know. I can't pronounce that right now. But that's how we look at everything.
For now, though.
Right.
But
Now, what we don't know is we're 3-dimensional beings. There might be another dimension that intersects our dimension.
wouldn't that be time?
Time is. Most
Like
scientists
the
agree
fourth
that time isn't really a dimension.
Okay. Space and time. Nah, man. I thought that would be a dimension. But
Well,
here's the
there's
problem.
problems with it being a dimension. But
Here's
go
the
ahead.
problem I have with science in that aspect. So yes, from our understanding right now, all those things are magnetic fields or the whole universe is understandable. But like I feel like every 50 years or every 100 years, there's like a perspective shift, and then we discover something new. We're like, oh, it wasn't this, it was that. Because I've read recently that people are moving away from string theory, and now it's all about quantum mechanics. Because we discovered that. So they're like, hey, what the hell is this? How does it work? They don't even know how it works.
Well, quantum mechanics has been around a long time.
Yes, it's like the 20s,
and
right?
we in fact, I studied quantum mechanics a long
We're
time
getting
ago.
into that right now. Nice to know that.
Of course, it was quite primitive back then. But quantum mechanics itself, they believe, is symmetrical. This is how they discovered the whole Higgs boson.
So we'll jump back on the Higgs boson. But can you please tell us what quantum mechanics is? Because a lot of people listening have a different understanding, or they don't even understand. I don't even understand what it is. And I've listened to tons of podcasts, tons of YouTube videos, and they're like, we don't even know how it works.
Well, the thing is that it's not. It doesn't work the same as what we're used to. Everything comes out as
random.
No, I don't want to go with random. Random is a different thing.
Yes.
It comes out just unintuitive.
Unintuitive. But what about the double slit experiment where they shot a bunch of particles, and when you observe it, it changes?
Right. Normally they call that the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. And when we get into quantum mechanics, we're at a level. Now you have to understand what the scientists did is they discovered things in the subatomic level and in colliding atoms and nucleus of atoms. They see these particles.
What do you mean subatomic level? Like, what, did it blow up the atoms? And then
yes, they blow up the atoms and they see all these particles coming off. And
they try to follow it?
Well, they put them in cloud chambers, they measure their energy, they look at them, they look at their behaviors, and they've tried to explain what these subatomic particles are.
They're still trying.
Trying
hard.
And what they found out is it can be explained very well with mathematics. And so quantum physics is just the explanation of this part of physics that they've discovered at the quantum level.
Okay. So there's a lot of theory, and I kind of believe it too, where your consciousness also plays a factor on quantum mechanics. Because you're saying everything in the universe is connected. Somehow your own consciousness and your thought and the way you observe the experiment changes the experiment.
Well, now consciousness is a very interesting concept in and of itself. Because as we deal with life and what life is, science tries to reverse engineer everything. And the simple cell we talked about earlier, they've tried to replicate that as best they can. And they're able to put all the pieces we know about there. But it's incomplete. There's something missing.
Yeah, consciousness.
Well, they say that's consciousness. Now, in a computer, if you weigh a computer, you look at it, you can test it, you can do all of these things, and you say, oh, well, but somebody comes and programs it, now it has a little more intelligence, but it doesn't weigh anymore. It it didn't, it
Yeah,
really,
I get what you're saying. You're
so
advancing it. You're
you-
advancing a primitive object.
you're ordering it, but there's no way to sense it. There's no way you can, from the exterior of the computer itself, realize that it has some intelligence. It has a program in it and is capable of doing stuff. You can't measure that externally. The only way you can do that is internally.
Internally. Got it.
Which kind of gets you into dimensions. But as we're dealing with quantum mechanics, that's what we're trying to do, is we're looking at the internals of particles and trying to, and
is it true though that when you observe it, the quantum mechanics changes?
It depends on how you observe it. For example, subatomic particles have characteristics or flavors, or let's say it has a right spin or a left spin.
Okay.
We just define that. And what they found is if you test to see if it has a right spin, then you can divide. These things have right spin, these have left spin. And you say, okay, now let's see if this has up or down characteristics. Now, as soon as you test for that, everything you test for spin is now gone. You can only look at certain things.
Right. Do you think that has to play with consciousness? Like you're observing and it changes. Like shouldn't it be the same exact way every single time?
Well,
it's like gravity. From our understanding, you throw something up, it must come down. You throw something up, it must come down. But quantum mechanics is very, very different. Like you test it this way, it works that way, and then you test it that way, and this way stops working, and it only suddenly works the way you want it to.
Well, it's not exactly like that. Let's say we take all the electrons and we divide them, and we send them a light year apart.
Sure.
So we only have this kind of electrons over here and that kind of electrons over there. So now we decide, we tested for just one characteristic. Now we start looking at the other characteristics of the electrons that are way over here.
Right, they'll do the same thing as the other one.
Now suddenly these are changing instantly. And we can have them a light year apart and they're still acting the same as if they were this. Now, that's very unexplainable to us. We don't know what's causing that.
That means there's a connection between those two. There has to be.
There's some kind of a connection.
There has to be some kind of connection. They're able to connect on some level that we aren't, I guess, capable of understanding yet.
Right.
That there was an experiment like that done with blood. They took the person's blood, they put it in a different room, and they measured it in something based on stress, and fear was able to cause the blood to change too.
Well, that's not the same as quantum physics. It's similar, but quantum physics, they can tell you, we can calculate very accurately what's going to happen. And as soon as we do something here, we know exactly what's going to happen there. And
that's crazy.
That's crazy. But
what do you mean if we do something here? Can you give me an example? Like if I drive my car down the street, I'm going to drive my car down the street again, or what do you mean exactly? Like,
well, we're talking about quantum particles and
very small.
Yeah, and they've tried to blow this up to work on a larger scale.
Okay. What do you mean larger? Do you think that opens the door to I don't want to say time travel, but like portals where you could jump from one place to a different place?
Well, perhaps if we could understand it. But what we found, and this was the problem that Einstein had. He had all of these great theories that fell apart at the quantum level. And the problem is that we've discovered in quantum, we have the large and small atomic forces that are acting there that have more influence than gravity and electromagnetic forces do at this level that we're most used to. And so we're trying to figure out how the universe works. But there's another part to all of this that's even strange.
Before you said it, I love what Einstein said when someone said, oh, this is random. He's all like, God doesn't play dice with the universe about quantum mechanics, which I love that quote.
Well, and to me, there is no such thing as randomness.
We just don't
We
understand
just
it.
don't understand the parameters that caused it.
Do you think there's such a thing as coincidence? Or
Now, a coincidence, that means two things are happening that are connected. Yes, I believe in that.
coincidence, like random coincidence? Okay. I'm just wondering. Okay, what were you saying that was the other thing that was happening?
Well, now the universe itself, we have a big problem on the very big scale at the other end, because the universe is the big scale.
Mhm.
Quantum mechanics is the little scale. And we can only account for 5% of the universe. That's all for all of our physics, all of our mathematics, all of our science. We can only explain 5%.
Do you think it's a little, I don't want to say scary or arrogant of us to predict the whole universe based on 5% of what we understand?
Well, the problem is that we know, we've cataloged what we don't know, in essence. And we call that dark matter and dark energy right now.
Right. Or antimatter? What's that?
Antimatter is a different thing, and that deals more with quantum physics. For example, if you have an electron, antimatter would be a positron.
Positron. Okay.
So it's a fermion particle that's positively charged instead of negatively charged.
Got it. And what was the other thing that you were saying? The other factor to quantum mechanics?
I don't know.
You lost your train of thought.
Yeah, I lost my train of thought. I mean, we're dealing with things that can, if you were to study at school, you would have, years of classes.
Right. And you're trying to
we're
explain
just,
that in
we're
what,
just
50
blowing
minutes?
through that.
Well, I've been reading a lot, and there's like even like documentaries like What the Bleep. I don't know if you ever heard of it. Just based on quantum mechanics and your consciousness, you're able to change outcomes and factors. I'm wondering how true that is.
Well, now see, I defined, and I didn't know if I did it for the podcast, but I told you earlier, in science, the definition of intelligence
You didn't, so yeah, go ahead.
is the ability to learn and modify your behavior.
Yes.
And so what we have learned through chaos theory and other things, you start modifying your behavior and you affect the world around you as well. So you begin to modify your environment as well. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Sort of. You mean like if you start waking up early in the morning, you start exercising, eating healthy, then you start changing the environment around you, start attracting better things, you start becoming healthier, attracting happier people.
Yes, all of that, and you might, if you're feeling better, you might make your bed in the morning.
Right.
And so
I make my bed every day, by the way. That's the first thing I do. Because of I was reading someone, and they said if you want to change the world, start by making your bed. It's the most simplest thing,
Well, yes, and with the idea that one of the basic signs too of intelligence is order. Things are ordered and put in play, and instead of chaos, they're more ordered.
That reminds me of something I've learned. So apparently the old model is cause and effect.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be something that's caused and you're affected by it. But what you're saying, which pertains to the quantum model, which is you can cause effect. So if you change yourself inside, imagine you're sad and you automatically just snap and you're happy, you'll change the environment around you too. Is that correct?
Well, I think so, but your mirror isn't going to change.
No, your mirror's not going to change. But the way you look at yourself in the mirror might change.
Yes, and that becomes key. Now, your light bulb isn't going to change, and how the electricity works around you, that may not change, but how it's used begins to be changed. And as you start to add order into your environment because of what you're doing, then it changes your environment that way. So I mean, that's sort of, to me, everything falls into place with order.
Okay, what order? So you're saying even quantum mechanics, with its randomness, it's not really random. We just don't really understand it.
Well, it's the randomness. If you talk to a hardcore quantum physicist, they will say it's very predictable randomness. It's very ordered and predictable randomness.
Like as in, there's something higher than us that knows what it's doing. We just don't understand it.
No, we can even figure it out.
We can even figure it out.
Yeah. In fact, we know, for example, how an electron will behave in an atom based on how many electrons in the type of atom it is.
Do we know why?
Now,
The
I,
why.
I don't. Why is an interesting question?
Right. Why is it behaving this way?
Uh,
We could find out how it's behaving this way
But
and what's
we-
causing it.
but we know it always behaves that way and it applies to everything, to all of the elements and whatever. If you push your finger on a table, you're
Uh-huh.
not really touching something. There's more emptiness than there is solidness in that. But the electromagnetic forces that exist there keep your finger from moving, and so
Right.
you're thinking that it's solid.
Do you think we could go far as to say if you change your vibrations, you could walk through a wall? Or that's taking it a little too far?
I think you could go. You should be able to walk through a wall by if you understood the ratios, you understood the forces that are there,
Mm-hmm.
and then adapted to that and utilized it. You should be.
I would love to see that. I mean, I can't do it personally, but I mean, you know what I mean? Like if you change your vibrations. Because do you think love is a form of vibration? Like, because when you have a sense of love,
I think to me, love is an
is it different?
intelligence.
Is it intelligence?
It's
Right.
it's an intelligent thing, and I don't like to me when somebody says, "Oh, it's an emotion." I think emotion is part of it, but it's incomplete. That's what I wanted to say.
Okay, got it. That makes sense now.
So that and the example I used was, and I can't remember if I told you or if it was here, of a cell dividing.
Yeah, here. Yeah, we're on there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. So you're in robotics and you specialize in physics, quantum physics. Do you think time travel is possible? That's a serious question.
Yes and no.
Theoretically, it's possible.
Well, we do this all the time in our science. We run time experiments on things. We do this in emulations and simulations. We simulate things, and we may do it at twice the time, or 10 times, sometimes 1,000 times, just to see what happens over time
Mhm.
with certain theories and certain stuff that we're doing. So I think it's possible, but when you say time travel,
Like you jump into a time machine and you go somewhere else.
yeah,
Or not somewhere else. I guess you're in the same place, but if you travel through time, you travel through space. Technically.
I think it should be, you should be able to see both the past and the future as well as the present. You should be able to visualize because each one is giving off stuff that you should be able to see. Now the question is can you change it?
Oh, can you change the
And-
past to
and-
reflect? But when you do that, don't you go into a different dimension because it's not already your own timeline?
Well, that's one of the theories.
Now we're-
But now we're talking into things, and nobody knows how to theorize that.
You're right. I mean, they know how to theorize. They just don't know how to prove it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And how can I put that? When they first discovered atomic fusion, and they discovered something was missing, and they finally gave it the label of neutrinos because they couldn't figure out what else to call it. So
What is neutrinos?
a neutrino is a subatomic particle that's neutrally charged, which means it has neither positive or negative charge.
Does that fall into quantum mechanics?
Yes, it's in quantum mechanics. And so they theorized that there was this thing called a neutrino, which is a particle that was given off. And since they have found neutrinos, and it was very interesting how they discovered it. It was kind of the opposite. If certain reactions would give off neutrinos, then if something was close and they could absorb neutrinos, then they could maybe work backwards.
What do you mean work backwards? Like a negative charge will work backwards and
Yes.
become a positive charge?
No. See, a nuclear fusion reaction gives off a neutrino, so you end up with less matter and energy than what you started with.
Okay.
So if you reverse that and you're trying to, and you put some things together and you expect neutrinos to enter in, then it will create something.
And you have more energy than when you started with.
Yes, you have more something than what you started with. And
can't they use that for like electricity and just like to power cities and stuff like that with just like something small?
well, no, the neutrinos are neutrally charged, and in fact, they go right through everything. Nothing stops them; they just go right through, and that's why they were so hard to actually find. Is because there was no way to stop them, and they're traveling at the speed of light. They think they're traveling at the speed of light, and so. But they're a very interesting particle.
They're a very interesting particle, neutrinos. Okay, I'll definitely read up on that. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's really interesting. So as far as time travel, it's possible, but the question for all of us.
Yeah, the thing that I'm saying is the travel part might be ambiguous because I don't know that you can change anything. Something that's already happened, I don't know that you can change it, but I think you can observe it. Now, some people say, well, if you can observe it, why can't you change it?
I was going to ask you this. So you said the past, the present, and the future. Do you think they're all connected? Because the way we perceive time might not be the way we perceive time, because it's not really linear from what I've read. What are your thoughts on that?
Wow. Boy, you're getting into some deep type of theories.
Okay.
And I have theorized that it's possible that there's another dimension involved in where we are. And the one thing, if you take Einstein's equations that he used to come up with E equal mc squared, what happens if time goes to zero?
If time goes to zero?
Yes.
But time is man-made, so nothing will happen.
Well, no. See, let me talk about an atomic clock. And if you think of a photon, this is light.
Okay.
And light travels very rapidly, 186,000 miles per second. And it's going back and forth between two mirrors. And each time it hits a mirror, it clicks our little clock.
Okay.
Okay. Now, when you start to move, the electron, it's not going quite straight here. It now goes at an angle before it hits the mirror. And then it's going to reflect back. And as you approach the speed of light itself, it's going that little photon can only go the speed of light. So if your mirrors are and everything is moving, it's going to look like it stops. It's no longer going to tick.
And then what happens?
Well, your time stops. And this is what they talk about in black holes when you go beyond the event horizon. That you enter a singularity where space-time is so warped that time stops.
So humans aren't really capable of doing that at all. We're sending a body through that fast speed. I mean, you just had a subatomic particle because we can manipulate elements, but
well, we don't know. Now,
we don't know.
And I mentioned to you before about the Kardashev scale of civilizations.
The 1, the 2, the 3.
And the 3 level would be able to utilize the energy and resources of a black hole, which now we're getting into something way beyond
us. I think that might be aliens in a sense, because they're higher, or more intelligent beings.
We're talking about ants looking at a jet plane flying over. So it has no clue what's going on.
Just for people that don't know what the Kardashev scale is, it's Kardashev, sorry. It's 3 levels of how we could measure intelligence.
Well, no, a civilization.
Civilization, and how far they are based on their intelligence.
Yeah, how advanced they are based on their use of technology.
Intelligence.
You can look it up on the internet.
So number 1 is how you can manipulate the elements around you.
Well, number 1 is a civilization that's able to utilize and manipulate the energy and the resources of a planet.
Right. The planet. So what's number 2?
to be able to utilize the energy and resources of the sun.
Oh, okay. Well, technically, if we use the rays of the sun for let's just say like powering electricity, isn't that level 2? Technically,
Well,
or are you talking about the power of the sun, like
yeah,
like
the
the
whole-
whole sun?
yeah, the whole sun.
Okay, got it. Yeah, that's
and when
different.
you're talking about a whole planet, you begin to realize we're a level 0 civilization now because
Okay.
we can't even utilize what's here on our planet. That,
Why not?
well, we haven't figured out how to do that yet.
Well, can we utilize like the ground for soil to plant seeds to
Yes.
grow things? Isn't that level 1?
No,
technically?
level 1 is being able to use and manipulate
Without
everything on the planet.
without destroying the planet.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
but see, we haven't harnessed the weather. We haven't harnessed,
Yeah.
The geothermal. There's a lot of things.
Okay. What's
And-
level 3, by the way?
Level 3 is a galaxy,
Being able to harness the whole galaxy.
the whole galaxy.
How would you theoretically harness a galaxy?
Well,
What?
that's what I'm saying. We're sitting here trying to figure out what it would be like for something else like that. And I think that's like an ant looking up at a jet plane trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
We just don't have the resources to understand that.
Yeah, definitely. No problem. Yeah, drink some water. That's really interesting. I mean, there's theories and documentaries I read where higher beings are just higher forms of consciousness. What would be your thoughts on that? If you want to put that microphone back.
Oh,
Yeah, there we go.
I'm not sure what a higher consciousness is. Because I think I told you earlier, I think of everything logically.
Yeah.
And I think they have advanced intelligence,
They have advanced intelligence.
which means they are able to learn and modify their behaviors. And their understanding, because they're able to bring in a lot more data. They're able to understand all of the data of a galaxy.
I mean, yeah, if you could harness your own planet and then the sun and then the galaxy, yeah, you're next level. You're
Yeah.
definitely next level.
Now, let's see, one of the theories is there was a guy that came up with what is called a Dyson Sphere. And this is to harvest all of the energy of the sun.
Okay.
But all of the sphere does is collect everything that the sun is radiating. The sun has a lot more energy other than what it's radiating.
Mm-hmm.
There's internal a lot of things going on. So to be a Dyson Sphere really isn't to that level yet. And how you would harness even a planet, we don't know. Getting to a sphere is a whole other problem.
Yeah,
I mean, getting to a sun.
Yeah, that's okay. So for them, what we were saying before was for people that can harness the sun that are on level 3 or
No,
handles
that's
the
level 2.
galaxy.
Okay, the
Yeah,
galaxy.
galaxy. So the stuff they could do to us, that's literally magic.
Oh,
Like we would be like, what the hell is going on? Or I'm sorry, what is going on?
well, even somebody that really is at a level 1, a lot would appear magic to us.
Yeah, like if you do a rain dance and you bring the storm, like back in the days when there were, some people somehow were able to do like rain dances or things like that in order to save the crops. That was literally magic.
Well, it seemed like magic.
It seemed like magic.
Yes, and that kind of gets back to my theory of ratios and music, with the idea of it wasn't just a dance; it was a chant, and there were other things. So there were ratios going on, and they believed that they tapped into these ratios.
Do you think
they
that's
could change.
possible?
I think it is, but
Nice.
but what we're looking at here is an incomplete
Puzzle.
puzzle,
Yes.
and we don't even have all the pieces. So it's going to be very hard for us to put it together.
Well, that's why I started this podcast. I'm picking other people's brains. Whoever I talk to says something different, but I feel like everyone is kind of talking about the same thing: vibrations and energy, and how they'll have everything to play in the universe and are able to, I guess, like change things around us or matter. I think there's a key to that. I mean, of course, your consciousness, your own thought process has a lot of power too. Because if you believe you could do something, you could do it. Well, to a certain extent, I'm not saying I could fly, but if I believe like deep down inside I could run a marathon, even though I'm not really trained or in any way, somehow I could do it.
Well, I'll take that one step further. If you had access to the parameters that were necessary to run a marathon, you could apply them and do it. Just saying, I believe I could. Obviously, there's something missing.
Your subconscious.
Well, no, I'm saying you have to have all the parameters. And the one thing that I kind of wanted to add to this discussion is there is a pseudoscience as well as pseudo-magic.
Pseudo-magic.
These are, to me, something that's pseudo is missing an element. It's not complete.
Like fringe magic, a fringe science. You know what that is? Like that deals with telepathy,
Yeah.
precognition.
Mhm.
Do you think that's what's missing?
Well, I think when we don't understand something, obviously something's missing.
Yeah, I think when we don't understand something, they automatically think it's magic. But when I dig in, I mean, it's extraordinary what some people can do. But I think sooner or later, science is going to be able to explain it.
Hopefully, yes.
They will,
Yes.
100%. Like based on 500 years ago, if I showed someone what we're doing on this podcast in my phone, they would burn me at the stake. Really, right? They're like, energy, what? Light, what is that? You took a picture of me, like you captured my soul.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up. And may I add a little thought
You
to that?
had whatever you like.
I had a debate, for lack of a better term, with a hardcore atheist.
Nah, I don't like those guys.
No, that's okay. And he was, and we were talking about a God and whether a God is in this universe. And I says, the problem is, if you believe in evolution, and if you believe in advancing science and being able to reverse engineer stuff that's already going on, we should be able to, like the level 3, Kardashev level 3, we should eventually evolve the intelligence to do what God's doing.
So, yeah, well, it makes sense because in the Bible it doesn't say we have the power of God within us.
Well, yes. But the idea is we should be able to evolve. If you don't believe in evolution, then then I don't know what you believe in. But the whole idea of evolution is the idea that we can become more and more intelligent.
We can.
And what's the limit?
There's no limit.
And
it's only the limit of your imagination.
So what I propose to them is, if we are to say that God does not exist, well, if evolution is possible and there's no limit to it, then eventually God will exist. Who's to say that hasn't already happened somewhere, somehow, with some civilization, and that things are being engineered for our benefit where we're living and where we are now. But that's something else.
Actually, on that topic, so I've read studies and things like that where humans have kind of been put into this planet and we haven't really evolved like other animals. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, there is a difference between the intelligence that humans do as well with animals. And we talk about the definition of intelligence, the ability to learn and modify your behavior. Humans are the most adaptable to their behavior of any creature that we've ever come across.
Right. But it also causes us to be lazy, I feel like, in a sense. Now that we could go to a supermarket and buy anything we want, we haven't really adapted. Like, there's this guy I follow, Wim Hof. I don't know if you heard that is. They call him the Iceman. He can stay outside in the snow all night without having to bother him, or he could take cold showers for an hour or two, or cold bath with ice baths, and it doesn't bother him. And he's still like, people have become too weak in a sense with our clothes and everything else. We've adapted to being too nurtured. Like right now we're in a house. Right. Like if we were outside, we would be running, hunting, trying to find warmth, building a fire, and we've kind of lost those things.
Well, we kind of have, but at the same time, we've evolved from the hunter-gatherer type of civilizations to now we have more time to devote to other things. No, you're right. A lot of people waste that time and don't do anything with it.
Yeah.
But now we can develop arts. We can develop
creativity. And right now, I feel like right now, since we're safer, like right now I could go sleep and it's warm, no problem. I could devote more time and energy to first, more creative things, and second, more intellectual things like math, science, theories. When I'm not worried about fight or flight, I can actually put my mind to bettering society.
Well, and see, that kind of plays into the one thing that we were talking about, the third pillar that I talked about from magic, which is love, which is something that changes you so that you now are benevolent to your environment.
Nice. Not malevolent, but benevolent.
Right.
100%. Yeah. If internally you change, you ultimately just want to be a better human being and just contribute to society. Yeah.
The basic human, the basic creature wants to utilize the environment for survival.
Mm-hmm.
But we've now evolved to the point where we can do much more than just survive.
100%.
But we're incomplete if we're not benevolent, is what I'm trying to say.
That makes sense. Just be a better human being.
Right. And to me, that's very logical. It's very straightforward.
It is. Yeah, but there's a lot of broken people, that haven't really gone there yet. They haven't opened up their hearts. They haven't loved. They got a lot of issues.
Well, and the problem may be that we may not be able to progress in the Kardashev scale beyond the level 1 or beyond level 0 to level 1 even,
mm-hmm.
without destroying ourselves and our environment, unless we can develop that love to be benevolent.
I agree with you 100%. Yeah, open up your heart. Okay.
So that's, in a sense, a type of magic.
Yeah. On the last note, I always ask everyone this question: what do you think society as a whole can do, or just individuals listening to this podcast, just to better themselves?
Oh, I think it's that third pillar.
It's third pillar.
We need to concentrate on benefiting our environment.
Love thy neighbor.
Right, that's part of it. But even we have to be not wasteful, even of our resources. We have to utilize it beneficially. More beneficially. For not just us, but for the entire environment.
Yeah, and for our children and our grandchildren and their grandchildren, because if we destroy this earth, I mean,
we don't know of anything else.
Yeah, we don't know of anything else yet. Cool. Right on, John. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was an interesting discussion.
Yeah, it was. Right on. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, and hopefully we meet again and talk soon.
Okay.